I figured I'd put together a little video for a few purposes. Right here I have Noodler's Polar Brown fountain pen ink. Um, I'm a fountain pen, fountain pen snob. I like to use them exclusively at this point for writing and drawing and sketching, etc. I just genuinely enjoy it. I like being able to play with the different inks, play with different nibs, etc. So, I've been doing a lot of studies of master paintings and sketching with fountain pens and fountain pen inks. Now, fountain pen ink is notorious for fading and not having very good archival properties. That's where Polar Brown and other Noodler's inks, such as Heart of Darkness, come in. Those ones, looking at some tests that people have run online, they are more likely to resist fading as opposed to other fountain pen inks, which I've seen before and afters that have completely faded altogether. There are some other brands that have properties that prevent this fading. There's the platinum carbon ink, which is it's not a dye. It's more of, I think, actual particles than the carbon particles. So those resist fading. I like that ink. I have a bottle of that. One day I'll do a drawing with it and we'll talk about that. Another brand out there is, I don't know if I pronounce it right, Diatrimus, but I can never really find it in stock. And the prices were a little too high for me. No offense to that brand or anybody that likes it. I think people utilize it. There's artists that definitely utilize that, but it's just it's always been out of my grasp. It's been hard for me to find in stock, like I said, and like the price was just a little bit high. Here with the Noodler's inks, I gravitated towards those for those properties. I also like the fact that it came with a free pen. This was when I first started getting into fountain pens, and so that helped me out. And a bottle like this is about $18-19, and it comes with a pen. And there's some places you could find them on sale. It'd be about $15 and coming with a free pen. So it's just a really good deal. It's really good for me starting out and whatnot. So I wanted to talk about that and how I've been utilizing them. This ink right here is one that I've been using a lot for my studies of the landscape masters when I've been doing the sketching. And I have some people that follow me on YouTube, and they went up following suit, and they'd bought some of this ink. And one of them was using it for the first time last night, and she was having a little bit of trouble with the pen. So I wanted to talk about the Charlie pen and how to set it up. So that's one of the purposes of this video, is to kind of just discuss this pen in general. The second thing was to kind of just get a pen filled up with this ink, because I recently purchased some different tinted inks. I drew on one yesterday, an oatmeal kind of tinted drawing paper, so a tan paper, and I did the black on that, the Heart of Darkness. And now eventually, either today, later on today most likely, want to do one with a brown on the oatmeal tan tinted paper and see how that looks. I just have always been somebody that really loves sepia tones and colors. And if you saw the way I dressed, my casual clothes, it's very just earth tones and browns and whatnot. So I've always gravitated towards browns and always wanted to do artwork with that. So I believe that was what I wanted to cover, the kind of the purposes for this video. So the first thing is the Charlie pen in and of itself. So this pen comes free with this. By the way, this isn't a sponsored video or something like that. This is just me, like I said, explaining to one of my patrons, one of my friends, how to set this up. And I was also telling another friend who's in Taiwan about fleshing pens and whatnot. So it's a simple pen. It's an eyedropper pen. The name comes from the company, the newspaper in, was it France, Charlie Hebdo, that had that horrendous attack on them. And this is kind of a symbolic statement of it being free, the free word, and how powerful the free word is and whatnot. So it's it has a lot of important ideals behind just the name of the pen. So it's an eyedropper pen. It's made out of some type of, I think, vegetable resin. If you smell it, there is a smell to it. Some people hate the smell. Some people don't notice the smell. Some people love the smell. It's mainly, I think, pens that originate manufacturing in India have that pen smell, because they're using that vegetable resin in some of the productions over there. Anyway, so eyedropper pen, very straightforward. You just put ink directly into it. Then we have the nib and feed. Now with this, with pens in general, whenever you first get it, you kind of want to run water through it and get manufacturing oils out. This is easy because this is a friction fit, meaning that it's literally just pushed into position. So if you grab this and grab this here and pull, you can pull these out. Platinum pens make it very easy to do that, at least at the beginner ones that I know about. Same thing with like the Pilot Metropolitan, you can pull that out in that fashion. So anyway, here's the feed, and here is the nib in and of itself. So that's kind of almost complete assembly. You could take off this cap if you needed to. Anyway, when you first get a pen and something like this, you might have flow issues due to manufacturing oils. So you could take this. Some people will scrub it with an old toothbrush, soap and water. Make sure you rinse it really good, and that'll get that taken care of. Like I said, if you are unable to disassemble stuff, or things are a little tight and you're a little nervous about it, slow down, look up videos, start asking people online, because you don't want to break it. Now this is an interesting material. I believe this is ebonite. A lot of feeds out of manufacturing out of India is ebonite, which is a hardened rubber. They actually used to make a lot of the fountain pen bodies out of ebonite, and some Indian pens still do. Noodler's has some pens that come out in ebonite. I have some of those, and they're just very beautiful material. I believe it's what they used to use or still use to make bowling balls, etc. Anywho, you might be wondering, why am I talking about the material? With ebonite, it's easier to what's called heat set it the way you want it in order to get flow taking place. And I'll talk about that in a bit. So, to put it back together, lay the two on top of each other. Noodler's ink. Their YouTube page is Ink Must Last Forever. Okay, and I'll try to write that down. I believe that's what it is. Ink Must Last Forever. And he talks about these pens and setup. And he often, I believe, says, initially shoulder to shoulder. So shoulder to kind of shoulder right there. Okay. Now, I slide it back in. I don't know what this piece is called. It might be called like the housing or something like that. And I try to line up this feed with it. So I try to always think about the tip in line with that. Now, in theory, you put the ink in and you start writing with it. Now, sometimes there might be issues with it. These Noodler's pens, a lot of people call them tinkerer's pens. Something like, and I referenced the Pilot Metropolitan and the Platinum Preppy or Platinum Plaisir. You can just have parts on the nib that sit perfectly in the feed, and it has that set position, and you put it together. With Noodler's, I could have this guy, and this is a drastic example, have it overhang quite a bit and put it back together and have a large gap between it. Or I could push it in super close and play with it like that. So why, you might ask, it affects flow issues and whatnot. It affects the amount of ink that gets to the tip, flow rates, flexibility potentially, if your feed might catch the paper as you're writing and whatnot. So that's the one thing with these type of pens, and that works with other Noodler's pens like the Conrad, the Ahab. Um, the Triple Tail does get together like that when you put the feed in. I don't have a Neponset, but I believe that does the same way. Same thing with the Boston Safety pen. So all those Noodler pens will come together in those fashions. So anyway, like I said, in theory, you put it back together, it works. But you have the ability to adjust flow and whatnot. Another thing, and this is why I referenced the material earlier, you can do what's called heat setting the nib, where you take a cup of water, put it in the microwave for about a minute or two. Brian Goulet of Goulet Pens, Goulet, has a great video on heat setting the nibs, where he says, put a cup of water in the microwave just off of boiling. You take this, you stick it in for about 30 seconds, I believe. You want to be careful because setting stuff in just off of boiling, like if you're boiling certain types of water, you want to be careful of splashing and all that. So just be careful, be safe, and look up boiling stuff. Anyway, you sit it in the nib for about 30 seconds. It's going to get the ebonite, which is the hard rubber. It'll kind of soften it. And then you'll take it out and push those two pieces together. Now I usually take a paper towel and do that, mainly because, it's hot. So, you want to be careful with it. So if that's something you're interested in, look up heat setting Noodler's pens or fountain pen nibs. Nathan Tardif, Noodler's, has their technique where he kind of uses these little oil burner type lamps. But I think he says, it is hard to control the heat with those as well. So it's just, be careful. Anyway, so that's about that. And now filling is super easy. And I actually had loved these pens so much that I then got into the Platinum Preppies, because Platinum Preppies were capable of eyedropping them, where you open them up. You can put like an O-ring, which is a rubber kind of ring that helps prevent leaks. It kind of seals it up good. You can put grease around the threads to help prevent leaks, etc. Those Platinum Preppies, I think all of them wound up in the hands of my students. You may know that I do the fountain pens in the classroom project, where I gave fountain pens out to my students. I have an ink refilling station, etc. And I gave out Platinum Preppies. People actually sent me some Platinum Preppies. I gave those out. I had a gentleman from England. His company is Loft Pens. He had sent me a whole slew of pens. People all throughout the United States sent me stuff, inks. It was great. Fortunately, some of those pens are back in the classroom right now during the whole lockdown thing with ink in them, so I'm kind of a little nervous about them drying out. Anyway, so I filled it up. If you want to recap it, whenever I tell kids about fountain pens, I always say, after you fill them up, hold them vertically or horizontally. You don't want to store them upside down because it could leak into it. Be careful. Anyway, so it may take a moment for it to start to flow. And people that use cartridge pens, when they put them in, they'll say, leave it upside down for a minute or two just to get the flow into the feed and whatnot. So that's what I'm just trying to get going on right now. And while I do this tapping, I have two desk pens in my classroom that I'm concerned about. I like to give lecture notes in through the overhead. I have a document camera, and I'll use fountain pens in different colors, and it's just something I genuinely enjoyed doing. But I have two Platinum desk pens, which are these pens right here, that have been sitting in that classroom for over a month now. But I found that they restart really easily. So I'm just trying to, like I said, get this flow started. Unfortunately, that does put a little slight damper in the flow of this video. I apologize for that. Yeah, there we go. So we got it going. All right. So this is Noodler's Polar Brown. And this is in Free Charlie. Okay, so flow's good. Like I said, I took it, I cleaned it up before I started this video, ran some soap and water, and got it all nice and clean and got all the soap out of it. But if I was having issues, you don't have to, if you're somebody that doesn't want to get ink all over their fingers, you can slide it out some and start adjusting how far it sits. I pulled the whole nib out, and that's fine. I could slide it right back in, or I could pull the whole feed out and move all this around and play with it to the way I like it. One thing that I think Nathan in his video talked about was looking through the tines, just seeing a little bit of light through it. I believe here I have a little bit more hanging off the edge, so this is playing with the nib, so we got to get it flowing again because I pulled the ink off. Okay, so that was a little bit to the end. Let's see if I can get some line variation taking place. We do get some. I found that this ink is a very wet ink, very free-flowing. I have to be careful what paper I use. Let me pull it out again. Let me adjust it for you. Kind of put it right near the end, right near the tip, to see how that affects it. Let's do, once we get it flowing, because my fingers pulled the ink off. And I believe closer to the edge, we get more ink coming out. You could kind of potentially see that we get a little bit darker variation. We'll see how it dries, but there's that. You see how better it flows up here with it closer to the end. So a little bit farther away gives you a potential for more flex. Maybe not so much with this nib combination. Closer lets you get more ink out. I'm going to set it about halfway between the two. And as we've seen, that this works in any position, but we can adjust it slightly to the way we want. And whenever you get into other Noodler's pens, if that's like a path that you chose to follow, you can play around with that. Just trying to get this nib to seat nice with it. Right there. And let's do, just to get it starting again, okay, so that's pretty much everything about the pen in and of itself. I hope that's a good primer, because for, like I said, $15 to, let's say, $22, because there are some 4.5 ounce ones that kind of go a little bit higher like that. That's the Bay State Blue, I believe. Bay State Concord, I don't have those inks, but I believe they come with a pen as well. They're 4.5 ounces, and there's a little bit of price range there, but it's a really good package. And like I said, this isn't a sponsored video or anything like that. It's just, I genuinely really like this company, and I really like what they provide and all the options out there. let's see. So that's playing around with this. This ink in of itself, let me just talk about it at this point. It's looking at their website. So properties. This is, it comes in 3 ounce, I believe, or 4.5 ounce, because I obviously have a 4.5 ounce bottle of it. It is archival. It is bulletproof. And that's a term that Noodler uses. It's kind of a blanket statement for some of the properties like UV and all that. But whenever you're looking at inks on a lot of different pages to buy, you could look up archival, waterproof, light fast. They might have a bulletproof option, and it'll help you sort out ones if you're looking for ones that are potential light fastness. But as with all pieces of art, you don't want to expose it to direct light and sunlight and all that. So they can fade, and every test that I've seen does have a slight fading with the strictest of so there could be potential fading with these, so just play it safe. We have forge resistant. We have lubricating. Now, lubricating, I believe that is for the older piston fillers, because from what I understand with Nathan Tardif, Noodler's inventor and whatnot, he apparently used to fix from a very young age fountain pens and sell them and whatnot. And I think they're, older pens with piston fillers that you weren't able to take away. There is a theory that whatever lubrication is there can help lubricate those piston fillers on the inside. This is polar, meaning that it's like freeze resistant. I don't know if it says on the bottle what temperature. Okay, bulletproof on cellulose versus the tools of forgers. Made for the coldest North American and Scandinavian conditions. Slippery as an ice floe without freezing like one. That's a good quote. Don't worry if you left your pen in your car anymore. So if you leave your pen in the car and it gets cold overnight, you don't have to worry about it freezing. The only polar ink for fountain pens. One of the smoothest writing inks on the planet. I could definitely attest to that. This is a very smooth writing ink. So it is also water resistant. You could watch you could actually go and see written reviews and whatnot on these inks, and people do tests on it. That's a Fountain Pen Network, their Facebook page, and they'll do droplets of water and whatnot. I don't usually do those tests, but I don't know. Let's see. They'll do it like after a few minutes and see. Yeah, so it's pretty water resistant. There is some movement around. And I've read that sometimes it's because excessive dyes sitting on top that might cause that, or there just might be some pushing that happens and taking place. But if I had another fountain pen ink in front of me that was not waterproof, I'd show you. And I guess that's for whenever you spill your coffee or other scenarios, or you put a glass on top of it and whatnot. Anyway, so that's all the properties. This pen, since I've been using these pens for art, if you want to turn it over to get a finer line, that helps as well. So it has its potentials as art, and that's why I kind of use those in the videos. And whenever you guys follow along any of my drawing videos and whatnot, you can use anything you want: pen, pencil, ballpoint pen, all that stuff. You don't have to use these inks and whatnot, but this is just where I had fallen and really enjoy. Okay, let's see if we have enough room on the screen. We do. Let's see. So I've been working on my script. It's not the best yet, but I've been playing around with it. So obviously should have capitalized that, but it's a nice ink. This is a paper that I got from Office Max. I don't know the name of the brand. If anybody has any idea what the name of this brand is, let me know. I usually use rodeo paper, but this has been handling pretty well for me, and it's been handling pretty well for my skill level with fountain pens, where rodeo paper is definitely top of the line. It's definitely smoother than this paper, and I think it is better, without a doubt. But for price point and for me practicing, I think this is pretty good. Now, I'm going to put this away. I'm kind of dragging out this video. I apologize. I mean, you can kind of skip around, but apparently I'm a talker. Or maybe I just don't have enough talking going on. So this is Strathmore paper. This seems a little on the tone side. I think they call it a natural white. This was just a quick sketch with Noodler's Heart of Darkness. So let's do a sketch to see how it looks for the polar brown. And then, like I had said, ultimately the goal was to get this pen filled up with the polar brown, to demonstrate how to do that for people that are deciding to get these inks, and also so you could see what it looks like art-wise. Noodler's does have a variety of browns. There's one that I've been trying to get my hands on. They call it number 41 brown. I think it's based off of 41 was somebody up in Boston, Massachusetts, I think. So there's a history behind that one. They also have a golden brown. They have what's called Rome Burning, which is a brown that it's made with a yellow and a purple, and you can wet it and it'll wash the yellow out and leave behind the purple. So it's a really cool property of it. And when I had gotten that, I had done some fleur-de-lis over a vague shape of Louisiana, and then rinsed out, and that gave me the that purple and gold, which is very common Louisiana style art color. It was very pretty. I'm not too versed on there. I think there's like a walnut brown, but if you're looking at it for art purposes, look up the properties of them. There's one that's exclusive for some company. I think it's called Whaleman's Sepia. I would love to get one of those one day. A bottle of that. Anyway, so this is just kind of sketching to kind of give you an idea what they look like sitting next to each other. My one concern is that, like I said, I want to utilize it for art. And I wanted to see the variation in tone, because with the sketching in the videos, that's what I've been harping on, is tone and texture. Using the same pen that, let me show you. Using the pen with Heart of Darkness, and just switching over to another pen with the Polar Brown in it. The only variation that I'm changing is the ink, and potentially flow rates and whatnot. But drawing paper seems to handle it well. If I did cartridge paper, it would bleed, I believe. That was just my experience in the past. But like I said, I mean, between this ink or the other ink, I mean, at most you're spending, you know, $20 for. This will last you a long time. This, you know, will last a long time. And it's cool. One thing with these is that some people say, you know, there's a burping thing that can take place with these pens. When they say blurp, like a splotch can come out, but it's not happening now. And that usually happens because your hand is in contact with the barrel, warming up the barrel, warming up the air and the ink on the inside, and then it wants to expand, so it'll push out the hole. One way to prevent that is to have the pen more on the full side and always have more than about 1/3 of ink in there. Another thing that I found is whenever I'm drawing, if it splatters out and blurts, all I need to do is just do a little edge of a paper towel and it'll soak it up. And I never really had super issues with it, but I kind of think that the sketching and the drawing I do, you know, looking back at the master sketches, they get those blots and all that. They were using quill pens and dip pens, so I might actually add to the feel of the painting or the drawing. The other negative is that with these, there seems to be a slight, I guess the word would be permeability of water being able to evaporate. So after a few weeks, it might seem like the level's lower and lower if you haven't used it. I think that's a property of the vegetable resin. So it's just something to keep in mind. I have one filled with the Noodler's Nikita, which is the red, and to come with it. So that was a pretty cool ink as well. It's just a really cool pen. So I'm sure if you made it through all this, you're probably exhausted. Hopefully I gave you guys a lot of information. Once again, this is Noodler's Polar Brown. Check it out. Check out these pens. If you're having an issue with the pen, you know, try that cleaning and the adjusting of it. Look up Brian Goulet's heat setting video. And if you have any issues, you know, drop me a question underneath in the comments and I'll try to address them. And if I don't know the answer, I'll see if I can find the answer for you all. Anyway, on that note, have a great day. I'll be back later on with some painting and drawing videos.